Start the setup process by adjusting the length of the support legs depending on the desired height and setting the machine horizontally on a solid surface. Loosen the winch strap. Attach the winch strap to the feeding table support arm. Open the feeding table extension. Tighten the winch strap in preparation for lowering the beam. Release the beam locking mechanism and pull the beam outwards. Use the winch to lower the beam. Detach the strap from the beam and attach it to the conveyor. Release the feeding table locking mechanism and pull out the feeding table. Ensure that the table locks into place. Lower the rear support roller's mount to the lower position. Adjust the beam leg to the correct length. Detach the log lifter pin and carefully lower the log lifters. Attach the strap to the conveyor. Use the winch to turn the conveyor upright. Open the locks on both sides of the conveyor. Lower the tip of the conveyor so that it almost touches the ground. Ensure that the folding roller is not misaligned. Straighten it if necessary. Straighten the conveyor in a controlled manner from the end. Disconnect the conveyor belt support chain. To finish up, close the splitting guard cage. Before starting the machine, check the lubrication of the chainsaw. Grab the operating handle and perform sawing motions until oil begins dripping off the chainsaw. If no oil is released, check the lubrication adjustment. Adjust the length of the firewood by moving the stop plate. Open the locking screw in the stop plate arm and move the stop plate until it is in the desired position of the length scale. Tighten the locking screw firmly. The conveyor can be adjusted laterally onto one of 5 different operating positions. Open the locking mechanism with your left hand and move the conveyor to the desired operating position. The conveyor's inclination is adjusted using the winch. Before starting the machine, make sure that the splitting guard cage is closed and the operating handle is locked. Start the firewood processor with the tractor idle. The maximum RPM of the tractor's power takeoff should be approximately 400. After startup, check that the conveyor belt runs straight. Lower the end of the conveyor to the operating height. If necessary, use the screws at the end of the conveyor to adjust the belt so that it does not touch the slides or slip on the drive roller. The drive roller at the lower end of the conveyor can also be adjusted if necessary. The height of the splitting axe can be adjusted according to the thickness of the wood. Use the adjustment lever to adjust the height of the axe so that it hits the center of the log. When replacing the splitting axe, make sure that the axe is in the upper position. Lift the splitting axe off the groove. Lower your chosen axe back to the groove and use the adjustment lever to set the desired height. Release the operating handle's locking mechanism so that the splitting piston returns to its rear position. Always lock the operating handle before lifting a log. Lift the log onto the lifter arms so that the distance between the user and the log is at least ½ a meter. Ensure that the log is balanced on the lifter arms. Raise the lifter hook with your left hand and carefully push the operating handle forward. The lifter hook engages the feeding table dowel, which lifts the log. Roll the log onto the feeding table, release the operating handle's locking mechanism, and lower the lifter arms. Use the operating handle to push the log against the stopper plate. Make sure that the log does not come into contact with the edges of the feed opening. Start the sawing process by pulling the operating handle and make sure that the log does not come into contact with the feeding table as it returns to its original position. If necessary, adjust the height of the splitting axe. Once only the last piece of the log remains, raise the stopper plate by pushing the crank above the machine. Return the feeding table to its original position and release the crank to drop the wood into the splitting groove for splitting. The Pilkemaster can also be used to split sawn logs or resplit large pieces of wood that have already been split once. Place the log you wish to split into the splitting groove. Operate the separate splitting mechanism using the operating handles located on the guard plate. Run the feeding table to the front position and lock the operating handle. Turn off the tractor's power takeoff. Open the splitting guard cage. Attach the conveyor belt support chain. Take a wide grip of the conveyor and fold it by lifting it from the articulated section. The end of the conveyor must be at least 1.5 meters off the ground before folding. Use the winch to turn the conveyor upright. Lock the conveyor extension. Use the winch to turn the conveyor onto the machine. Loosen the strap and check the locking mechanism. Raise the log lifter to the upper position and secure it with a pin. Lift the rear support roller to the upright position. Lift the beam leg. Release the feeding table locking mechanism and push the feeding table in. Attach the winch strap to the feeding table support arm. Use the winch to lift the beam into the transport position while making sure that the strap is not chafed during lifting. Make sure that the beam locks into position. Turn the feeding table extension into the raised position. Release the strap from the feeding table support arm, slip it through the guard cage and beam, and fasten it to the conveyor. Use the winch to tighten the strap. Before transporting, ensure that the legs of the machine are sufficiently high.